Anybody give me a thumbs up? Thank you. All right, this is being recorded in behalf of students who are getting vaccinated. Okay. So, reminder before we start. What is the opposite of gentle? SAT. Antonym of gentle. Rough. Rough. Yeah. Rough. Harsh. Reminder. Reminder. I'm angry. I'm angry. Not a gentle reminder. The mesocosm lab. What's happening? Did you not do it? Or if you did you not fill out the form? So anyway, I was fixing up my grades last night and looked at mesocosm lab. I only have one submission. So I am reminding you that was supposed to be due at the end of the unit. We're already starting with our next unit. What did you put there? My plants kept dying. It will in the mesocosm. But you need to observe which mesocosm, which condition was it more sustainable. So yeah, you should have observed that. It will eventually die because you can't make a perfect mesocosm with all the nutrients or whatnot required in your glass. However, in two conditions, let's say one is in by the window, one is in complete darkness, you should be able to observe that the one in complete darkness should wilt and die faster than the one with access to sunlight. Because light is one of the ingredients for sustainability. Light, um, detoxification of waste, and nutrient availability. So, yeah, reminder. Um, so I'll remind you probably next week again. Give you 1 week after this rough reminder. After the rough reminder, we'll just then there's no submission. There's no grade. I will plan to finish 6.2 today. Yes. And I have watched your explanations on your poster. I have seen your notes, and it looks like you have information available for you already. So, my goal is to simplify that and to focus on the important aspects. So, without further ado, yes, Christine.
By the way, Miss, in the basics, you said for the infographic, it's like missing work, but then you said it was due today. So
Did I move it? I thought I
yes,
moved it to today's Wednesday. I thought I moved to one day. Wednesday. Okay. Those who have no submission, I will check again today. I said today. Okay. I will check again today. And so please make sure that's uploaded. Okay. So you're not late. Sorry. 6.2. Okay. All right. A quick review. Somebody, Juan, can you access the Jamboard from last class? Paste it there, please, so we can keep putting our thoughts there in our whiteboard. We had one for from last class, I believe. Today is Tuesday. Okay. Thank you. Everybody open the jam. We'll refer to that once in a while if I have questions. So let me actually review from the Jamboard. You can review from the Jamboard. Click on the Jamboard, please. Let's look at what we put last time. So on our first Jamboard, we said that these are the different layers of your arteries, right? And these same three layers are found in your veins. Difference is for arteries, it's thicker and there's more elastic fibers in the tunica media. I am in Jamboard 2. We talked about the role of your arteries. It sends oxygenated blood from your heart to the rest of your parts of your body. I'm in Jamboard 3. We talked about the importance of the coronary arteries. If the coronary arteries have plaque buildup, by the way, thank you for reminding me in your reading notes, what do you call that? What is the term that is used to describe plaque buildup and narrowing of your arteries? It starts with letter A. Anyone? Unmute. I've seen that in your reading notes. It's called arteriosclerosis. Correct. Say that 2 times. You're unmuted. Just say it out loud so you can hear it. Arteriosclerosis. 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 It's easy to remember. Arthero, think of arteries. Sclerosis, meaning it's dead. There's sclera, there's thickening there. So arteriosclerosis, that's when you describe your arteries to be narrowing because of plaque buildup. Okay. And then I'm in Jamboard 4. We talked about the pressure in your arteries. So your arteries will have systolic pressure and diastolic pressure. That is shown in a blood pressure monitor. You get two numbers, up and down. It's talking about systolic and diastolic blood pressure. I am in Jamboard. Why can't I breathe? I'm in Jamboard 5. I'm in Jamboard 5. You visually explain to me what systolic and diastolic pressure is. It's also some of you also added that in your posters. So systolic blood pressure when blood is pumped out of your heart, so it goes to your arteries, and your arteries expand. So that pressure in your arteries when blood is flowing through it is called systolic blood pressure. After that, there's no more blood, it will relax, and there's still going to be pressure there in your arteries. It's called diastolic pressure. So I said we use that as an indication of well, this if there are damages in your blood vessels or if there's plaque buildup, that will be shown as a higher than normal blood pressure reading. Okay. I am in Jamboard 7. We talked about stroke. This is also a consequence of those plaque buildup, those arteriosclerosis. That vessel can burst. And if it bursts, that vessel in your brain bursts, it leads to stroke. I am in Jamboard 8. So we talk about arteries, then we talk about capillaries. Your capillaries will only have one layer. We said it's very thin, it's one cell thin, and there's many pores. By the way, thank you. In your infographic, I remember it was Angel and Isabella, where you put a picture of the capillaries, and then there's a membrane, a basement membrane, FYI for everyone. There's also a basement membrane. Basement membrane is like a thin tissue that's very permeable. It's kind of like a covering also, but it's permeable. So you have the basement membrane wrapping that one layer of your endothelial cells, capillaries. Okay. Anyway, why does it need to be like that? Well, because in your capillaries, it that's where your exchange of nutrients and waste, exchange of your oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs between your blood vessel and your body tissue. So to be able to efficiently transfer that nutrients, waste, CO2, O2, capillaries need to be very permeable. And it can do that because it's only one cell thin and there's many holes, and the basement membrane is very permeable. I think Isabella explained in her poster. Is there Isabella or Joan? I can't remember. I have voices in my brain. You were saying that, like the arteries keep branching into smaller and smaller branches, and then eventually it becomes capillaries, you said. That branching lowers the blood pressure because it's becoming smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Imagine, like, the flow of blood. You're trying to distribute it to so many branches. Eventually, when the flow of blood reaches the capillaries, there's no more pressure. It's lower pressure. It's far from the influence of the pressure from the heart. If there's no branching, the blood, you can feel all of that blood flow through the rest of your body. But then, because there's branching, it minimizes that blood pressure. So once it gets into your capillaries, there's lower blood pressure there. I am in Jamboard 9. Nothing. Okay, so we reached all the way to Jamboard 8. Then we talked about, we compared, I'm now sharing my slides. We compared, is this what I use? Pardon me, children, this is not what I use. It's just a copy. 6.2 lecture. This one with lots of GIFs. I'm just not gonna present because the GIF is taking too much of the network, the internet. Okay, I was talking about capillaries. Okay, we talked about that. We really focus on the difference between arteries and veins. You have it in your poster. You have it in your reading notes. I gave you lecture notes. Make sure you can differentiate between the structure of your arteries and veins. Okay, and then we talked about the veins, and we said that in the veins there's no pressure, very low pressure. So how can blood from your veins how can blood from your veins, how can blood from your veins return to your heart? Well, I said number one, gravity, gravity, because gravity pulls everything down. So from the head, upper part of your body, it can easily go backward. By the way, yeah, just for demonstration, so I can keep referring to the heart here instead of the diagram. So from the head to the rest of my upper part of the body, it's just gonna drain here in the right atrium by gravity. It's just gonna fall here. However, from the lower part of my body, lower part of the heart, for my legs, for example, how can it go back to the heart? Well, you have here another blood vessel. I saw this in your poster. It's called the inferior vena cava, superior vena cava from the top, inferior vena cava from the bottom. So how can it push blood all the way up? There's no more pressure. What did you put in your notebook? Two things. Number one, skeletal muscle. You have it there. Those veins are found close to your skeletal muscle so that when you move around, that contraction of the skeletal muscle, like right here in your legs, can help squeeze that blood in your veins upward. And when it does, number two, valves. Valves. Valves are found located in the stretch in the length of your veins. Why, miss? Because valves, you said this in your presentation also, in your explanation in the video. Once it flows out, once this blood flows up, these valves will close like this. So the volume of the blood will close it. Therefore, blood can just move up and there's no backflow. So it's not gonna flow back. Once the muscle squeezes that blood out, it just goes up and then the valve closes it so it doesn't flow back. Therefore, just a little bit of practical street science here. When you have long flights, have you ever had long flights and then, I don't know, your parents tell you to stretch your legs or move around? I try to do like this to my feet when I'm having long flights. Really, you're preventing the pooling of blood in your large veins. Because if you have long flights, let's say 17 hours of like not moving like this, what happens to those blood in your veins? It can just remain there and not be returned into your heart. So there's going to be pooling of your blood into your legs, and there's going to be poor oxygenation of your tissue because there's less volume of blood returning to your heart. So you will want to move around, stretch, move around. Really, what you're doing, you're not doing it for your muscles. You're doing it for your veins. Those muscles, those major muscles, when they start contracting, they all help squeeze. They all help squeeze that blood so it can go back into the heart. So if you don't have it there yet, please make sure you have one and two. What allows the how? What's the question here? How does blood return to the heart from the veins? Number one, skeletal muscles. Number two, presence of valves. Plenty of valves just to make sure it goes all the way up and not backflow. When it does, though, when it does pull, then you have all you can develop those what did we call varicose veins, sorry, the varicose veins. So that's when the valves are incompetent, there's pooling of blood, and then your veins get damaged. Miss, so what? That's okay. Remember, I said angiogenesis. We discovered that your blood vessels can form new branches whenever you have those damaged parts. And then what can you do? Well, you can do cosmetic surgery, just have it pulled out. Yeah, you don't like those varicose veins. Okay, I am saying goodbye to the blood vessels, arteries, capillaries, veins. Goodbye. I want to say hello. We're going to focus now our attention to the heart itself. Okay, so let's focus on the heart. Um, let's talk about the different parts of the heart. So this is review. You kind of have this. You kind of have this in your poster. So this is my heart. Maybe just fun and nice to know first. Look at the size of your hand. That's that's relatively the size of your heart. So they would say it's about the size of your fist. Um, and just fun to know, Koreans will have the Korean heart. And then I would ask my student, where is the heart there? Then they say, this is the heart. But then in IB Bio, I said, no, that's the pulmonary artery and the aorta. Look closely, look closely. Really, I think whoever started this thought biology, but everybody else thought it was this one. Now, your heart is slightly rotated to the left, kind of like your fist, exactly how your fist would. I'm so sorry, I may be right side left. Look at your own hand there. So it's like that. Okay, it's slightly to the left, tilted to the left. It's pointed here to the left, but again, it's in the center, pointing here in the left. And out of your heart, right here, you have the pulmonary trunk, which we call, the exact name is pulmonary artery. So this pulmonary artery right here, there's my pulmonary artery, is coming out from the right ventricle, right there. And this goes to my lungs, the left and right side of my lungs. You can't see it in my drawing, but it goes also here. So here and then like that to the lungs. And then you have another major blood vessel here. We're talking about the aorta already. It's coming out from the left ventricle. So it's behind, it's under the pulmonary artery. It's behind there. So it really is like this. Pulmonary artery going to the lungs. Aorta, this one, is coming from the left ventricle. So next time you do that, you're not giving your heart, you're giving your pulmonary artery and your aorta. You go like this. Focus here on the heart. On the heart. All right, let's talk about the heart. This is also in your poster. I appreciate your explanation. I feel like you understand it. So if you still don't understand, stop me, please. Let's organize this. What is the anatomy of your heart? So we focus on chambers, valves, and then blood vessels. So there are four chambers. Chambers in Old English, if you say a chamber, you're talking about a room, a chamber. I'm going to sleep in my chamber. Chamber is a room. So you have four rooms here in your heart. You have the little rooms here on top, the upper side called the atrium. So you have right and left atrium. You know, in school we have atrium. Do you remember we have an atrium, right? Like the middle there where we play ping pong. I don't know. It's called atrium. Atrium because it means it's the heart. It's the center. Anyway, nice to know. Body, atrium, center here, the heart. Center of the torso, atrium. So you have the right and the left atrium. You can think of, don't switch the right and the left too. Where's your right hand? Okay, wherever your right hand is, that's the right side also. Okay, it's always that. They never They never switch the presentation of the heart when you see it on the exam. It's always like this side is the right side of the heart. So you have the right and the left atrium, those little chambers. Then you have the larger chambers. We call the right ventricle and the left ventricle. Okay, so those are the four chambers. Any question? Right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. Okay, now with any chambers, you're going to have a door, right? Any room would have a door. So these doors that opens and closes between these chambers, we call them valves. They are opening and closing, opening and closing. They are the doors. They are the gateway between each room. All right, so if you're from the right atrium, ooh, one second. So if you're from the right atrium, between the right atrium to the right ventricle, there's a valve there. What is that valve called? It's in your poster. Unmute if you know. What is the valve? What is that valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle? It's called the
Tricuspid valve.
very good tricuspid valve. Miss, why is it called tricuspid? Because if you look at it, it's made of three cusps or like flaps. So tricuspid valve. Now, between the left atrium and the left ventricle, there's also going to be a valve there. That's an opening there. The valve is called Christine.
Mitral valve.
Mitral valve. Okay, mitral valve, or it can also be called bicuspid valve. Tricuspid valve, bicuspid valve. So make sure you know where the valves are. And you need to label where the valves are. All right. Now, listen carefully, between the right ventricle, okay, all the way to the lungs, as you exit this room of the right ventricle, you're going to have a valve here also. Okay. There's a door to get in the right ventricle, that's the tricuspid valve. The door to get out of the right ventricle, you call this the Dora. What valve is this? Exiting the right ventricle. What is this valve?
The pulmonic.
Pulmonic or pulmonary valve. Correct. So that's a valve located inside the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary or pulmonic valve. It's also called semilunar valves. So kind of know what the different names are, okay? Now, looking at the left ventricle here, to get to the left ventricle, you have the mitral valve. From the left ventricle, there's also going to be that door. There's going to be that valve. It's called the Raj. Raj. Not here. Jackie. Yuan.
The aortic.
Okay, Jackie. Aortic valve. Aortic valve is located in the aorta that closes and opens from the left ventricle. So let me go through the valves again. Right atrium to right ventricle, there's a valve. It's called the tricuspid valve. From the right ventricle chamber to the lungs, you have the pulmonary valve. It also opens and closes to the lungs. And then blood will go back to the left atrium. Then from the left atrium, it's going to go to the left ventricle. This door is called the mitral valve, bicuspid valve. That will open. Then from the left ventricle to the aorta, this valve needs to open and close. This is called the aortic valve. Okay, looking at my GIF, if my sketch here on my heart is not clear, look at the GIF on my PowerPoint. So this is the tricuspid valve separating right atrium, right ventricle. Then you're going to have the pulmonary valve right here separating the right ventricle from the pulmonary artery and then the lungs, because the blood will go to the lungs. So that's a valve that separates the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery. Then on the left side, you have the mitral valve, mitral, bicuspid valve. Where am I pointing? Right here. That opens and closes or separates the left atrium from the left ventricle. And then from the left ventricle, you're going to have another opening here called the aortic valve. So that opens and closes for blood to flow to the aorta. Okay, so 4 chambers, 4 valves. Know their location and what they separate. Last here for the anatomy of the heart is the major blood vessels. So what are the main blood vessels connected to your heart? Well, there's several. Let's start from the incoming blood. So we have incoming blood from your head, upper part of your body. It's called the superior vena cava. Vena cava, vena means vein, cava means cavity. Superior means on top, superior vena cava. Then you're going to have inferior vena cava right there. Inferior just means lower, right? So that is a major vein. Both of them, both of this vein drains blood to the right atrium. Okay, so they're connected to the right atrium. They drain blood here to the right atrium. Then we have this in your heart sign. You have your pulmonary artery. As you notice, I don't know, there's an effort for me. I colored it red first, and then I marked it with blue. Well, this is a pulmonary artery. The pulmonary artery is the only artery that carries the oxygenated blood. Jackie, you explained that in your poster. The oxygenated blood. So this pulmonary artery, where is it connected? It's actually connected to the right ventricle, right there. So you have that major blood vessel called the pulmonary artery. Where does this go? Pulmonary goes to the lungs. Okay? And then from the lungs, your blood can drain back to the heart, to the left atrium, through the pulmonary veins. So these are my pulmonary veins. This why is it red? It's a vein. Pulmonary vein is the only vein that carries oxygenated blood. So pulmonary vein is connected to the left atrium. And then you have the aorta. The aorta is connected to the left ventricle. So those are the 5 blood vessels. Look at the GIF here. Superior, look at my mouse please. Superior, inferior vena cava. Those are the 2 main blood vessels. Where are they connected? They're directly connected to the right atrium. Then you have your pulmonary artery right here. So the pulmonary artery is directly connected where? The right ventricle. Okay. And then you have your pulmonary veins. It's this one right here. Please have a look. These pulmonary veins are veins coming from the lungs, connected to the left atrium. And then you have your aorta. Aorta is connected to the left ventricle. So you can imagine your heart is very muscular, right? And there's like tubes coming in and out around it. So coming in, superior, inferior vena cava, pulmonary vein. Coming out, you have the pulmonary artery, pulmonary aorta. So that muscular tissue is supplied by 5 major blood vessels. Superior, inferior vena cava, pulmonary artery, pulmonary veins, and then aorta. Okay? Now, I want to talk about blood flow. This is the hardest. I don't know why, but anyway, you can do this. So how does blood flow in your heart? Let me just show you this GIF first. So as your heart beats, please have a look at the GIF. As your heart beats, the atrium contracts first and then the ventricles, right? So atrium, ventricles. Atrium, ventricles. Atrium contract, ventricles contract. Atrium contract, ventricles contract. And as they contract, please realize that your heart is divided into two. Your heart is divided into the right side and the left side. Okay? So when it pumps, when the atriums pump, when the ventricles also pump, they're supplying this blood to two different circulations. Okay? So the right side, look at the GIF, please. This right side pumps blood to the lungs. The right side pumps to the lungs. The left side pumps to the rest of the body. The right side pumps to the lungs. The left side pumps to the rest of the body. That, children, is what I saw in your reading notes. You put there double circulation. What is double circulation? Well, again, you have your heart. You have two sides, the left and the right. The right pumps to the lungs, the left pumps to the body. So if it pumps, it's in synchrony. Two atrium pumps together, two ventricles pumps together at the same time, but the right ventricle pumps it to the lungs. The left ventricle pumps it to the rest of the body. Okay, let's look at the GIF again. The left pumps to the pulmonary artery to the lungs. At the same time, sorry, why did I say left? Right. Right pumps to the lungs. At the same time, left pumps to the rest of the body. Okay, so lub dub, that dub, that's actually the ventricular contraction that you hear in the heart sound. That dub, that pumps to two parts. One, the right side pumps to the lungs. The left side pumps to the rest of the body. Let's look at the double circulation again. These two pumps, these are the two main pumps, by the way. The atrium just pumps it to the ventricle. But children, your ventricles are in charge of, number one, pumping it to the lungs. At the same time, simultaneously, the left side pumps it to the rest of the body. Now, why do you think it needs to have two circulation? Like, why is there double circulation? Why are there two pumps? Isabella.
Because of the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood.
Correct. Look at the color codes. There's blue and red. Miss, is it really blue and red? Oh, sorry. I'm just laughing. I'm laughing because people will think if you open your veins, you're going to get blue blood. If you open your arteries, you're going to get red blood. No. Veins are just closer to the skin. So when the light hits your skin, like it reflects the blue light. Blood is red, regardless where it is, okay? But anyway, we just color code it just so you have an idea that the right side, right, this side right here, you can see that the incoming blood is blue, meaning it's deoxygenated. But really, is blood blue? No, blood is red, okay? We're just saying blue, so you know it's deoxygenated. So it goes into the right side of your heart. Now, it needs to stay in the right side first, and it needs to be pumped into the lungs first so that it can be, Isabella said, oxygenated. Now, if you don't have two pumps, then from the heart, remember that's deoxygenated. What if you pump that to the rest of the body? You're just pumping deoxygenated blood, right? So we have to make another circuit. You know what a circuit is? Like a pathway. So we have one pathway to the lungs first, okay? Your right side of the heart is in charge of that. It pumps it to the lungs first. Why, miss? So that it can get oxygen from the alveoli, the cells of your lungs. And then it can release CO2. You actually breathe it out. This one is happening in your lungs. As you're breathing in, you're oxygenating the blood. As you're breathing out, you're releasing that CO2 found in your capillaries. So it needs to go to the lungs first, the first circuit, so it can get oxygenated. Now it's oxygenated, it will return to the left side of your heart. So when you're looking at the left side, you're looking at oxygenated blood now. From the left side, that's ready to be distributed because it has oxygen, can be pumped by your left ventricle to the rest of your body. Okay? I'll give you a moment to think about that. Just looking at the diagram here. What is the circulation and how does blood flow now through the heart? It doesn't flow one way directly through the heart. No, 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 no way. No, 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 no way. Maybe without you. It doesn't do that. It needs to go to the right side first. From the right side, it leaves your heart. It leaves your heart. Where does blood go, miss? It goes to your lungs. Don't worry, relax. It just needs to be oxygenated. Once it's oxygenated, then it returns again back to the heart. Okay? And then from the left side, it will be pumped out to the rest of the body. That, children, is what you explained to me in your posters. That's called the blood flow through the heart. It flows to the right side first, then to the lungs, back to the left side, and then pumped out to the rest of your body. Let it brew, let it brew. Let's look at this again. So as your heart pumps, just nice to know. If you ever use a stethoscope, maybe Christine has from her parents, the stethoscope, you can, the word is auscultate, A-U-S-C-U-L, T-A-T-E, auscultate. Auscultation is listening to heart sounds. So you use a stethoscope and you place the stethoscope in different parts of the heart to hear the activity of your heart. So when you listen to your heart, raise your hand if you've ever used a stethoscope. Like if you've experienced listening to it. Most of the time, children use it as a microphone. Christine. You go like, hello, 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 hello. You go like that. I've done this with my nephew. I put it in their ears. I go like, wow. It amplifies the sound. Stethoscope amplifies the sound. So when you put it here on your chest area, when the doctors check you, they put it in different areas. They listen to the heart sounds because it tells them the activity of the heart. So if they put it there and they hear like lup dup lup dup lup dup lup dup lup dup, but it's very fast. But then the patient is relaxed and lying down. There's something wrong. Why is the heart beat fast? Why is the heart beating fast? Sometimes as well they hear abnormal heart sounds. Oh, my future doctors are gonna enjoy this when you study this in medicine. It's called a heart murmur. I love that word when I learned it. Heart murmur. You know what murmur means? You know that word M-U-R, murmur. That's what you do to your parents. Murmur. Like if they ask you to do things, you go like, what? What did you say? Nothing. You did the murmur. Wait, you know the word murmur? Or I am assuming you know murmur. I know murmur because my parent always tells me I murmur. So I learned that word murmur. I'm like, what is murmur? Murmur is like you're not speaking clearly. So in your heart sounds, there's what you also call abnormal heart sounds. We call it heart murmurs. And this is where you hear extra sound. So for example, instead of lub tup, lub tup, lub tup, you will have, so that's two sounds, right? Lub tup. One is lower frequency, lub, and then tup, second heart sound. Sometimes there's an in between. So it can go like lub lub tup, lub lub tup, mic test, lub lub tup, lub tup, like that. Or an extra second heart sound, lub tup, lub tup, lub tup. You'll learn that in medicine. So all of these heart sound means the valves are not opening and closing in synchrony. So there's that extra gush of flow of the blood, and then you hear that as an extra heart sound. So the sound, this is not in the book. I just really find this interesting. Maybe because I like music, I like sound. That first sound, blub, that's actually created by the closing of your atrioventricular valves. Oh, miss, what is that? Atrioventricular valves. Those are the valves between your atrium and your ventricle. Right here, atrioventricular valve. There's two kinds of atrioventricular valve, your tricuspid and your bicuspid, also known as mitral valve. So these atrioventricular valves, they're more flexible. They're more flexible. So when they close, like there, when they close, you hear it as a lower pitch lub, lub. They're more flexible. But here, children, in your pulmonary valve and here in your aortic valve, by the way, these two valves are called semi-lunar valve. It's because, for fun, let's look at this. Um, Cross section, pull, no, 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 no. Semi-lunar valve, heart, top view. Okay, there, right here. So just showing you the valves, top view. So you cut it across the heart and then you look at it from the top. You would see that this is your tricuspid valve. Look at it. Look at how it's more bulgy and it's more flexible. So these two are more bulgy and more flexible. And then you will have your semi-lunar valves. So these three semi-lunar valves, they're made of cusps as well, but they're more soft. They're not soft. They're more tight. They're more tight. So when they snap close, there's that higher pitched sound that you hear. And Miss, why are they called semi-lunar valves? Children, have a look, please. Half moon, half moon, half moon. Half moon, half moon, half moon. Semi-lunar valve. So kind of like half moon, half moon, half moon, half moon. But there's three, by the way. So when these closes, the membranes of these valves are more taut. What's it spelled? Taut? Not taut. Taut. Like stretched, like taut? Oh, I'm missing the spelling. Is it Taughd? Taut? Sorry, I'll check my vocab later. But it's less flexible than these. So when these closes, children, you hear that first heart sound, blub. And then when these two closes, tup, you hear a higher pitched sound. So as your heart beats and you listen to that through the stethoscope, you're going to hear lub tup, lub tup, lub tup, lub tup. Okay, that's coming from the heart. Really, this ventricles as this pumps there, valves close, valves close. Look, valves close, valves close. So this is lub tup, lub tup. Anyway, I don't know. It's fun for me. I like the sound that it makes. So it's just really coming from the valves opening and closing. Now, if you have, let's make this realistic. If you have like infection of the heart, those bacteria can grow in the valves. Can grow in the valves. Therefore, when the ventricles contract, these right here, these valves cannot open and close properly. Let's say bacteria starts growing there. Okay, infection of the heart. Then you're going to have those abnormal heart sounds. And what's more dangerous is there could be mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Okay, because your valves need to keep close so that the blood doesn't mix from one chamber to the blood vessel, vice versa. This is also very interesting. You've all seen this in movies, right? So you have a patient. And then the ECG machine is connected, and that machine is to monitor the electrical activity of your heart. And as it does that, you will have different peaks here. You'll enjoy this in med school. You have the P wave, that this one corresponds to the electrical activity of the contraction of the atrium. This one is the monitoring the electrical activity of the ventricles. So as you can see, there's more electricity here when the ventricles are contracting. Yes, because ventricles are much larger and they pump harder. So that QRS wave, we call it a wave, P wave, QRS wave, T wave, they correspond to the muscular activity of the heart. This one is the atrium, this one is the ventricle. This is just basically the ventricle when it's relaxing as well. There's another wave there. And what do you see usually in movies? This is not random. When you see in movies, somebody's dying, goes, doot, 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 doot. And then doctor goes like, code blue, and then they get the, what do you call that? That one? Ooh, it's not in my brain. So they connect those in the heart and they go like, boom, 1, 2, 3, clear, boom, They're trying to revive the heart. They're trying to introduce electricity to the heart because children, the heart lost its electrical conductivity. That's why you what you called it flat line. When you say okay flat line, it means hashtag dead. There's a flat line there. Have you watched the movie Flatliner? No. It's a good one. Watch when you have time. Flatline. So basically, the medical students were trying to investigate brain activity. There is still some brain activity when a person goes flatline, but they said there's a window of time that you can revive the body once it goes flatline. Because what's accepted in medicine is if it's flatline, then it's dead. But in the movie, of course, this is science fiction. But they're saying there's still a window on that flatline where you can still have brain activity and therefore be able to revive the person. Anyway, that's flatline though. I mean, the flatliner is kind of sci-fi. They're saying, okay, once you get revived in that window in the flatline, you have like paranormal powers or something like that because your brain is now more stimulated. Again, um, sci-fi. But the point is, you've seen these flatlines in movies. It's talking about the electrical activity of the heart. Okay, just focusing on the blood flow. This is not. I don't think IB will ask you to know it. Just please know that the right side of your heart it pumps to the lungs first. Okay, and from the lungs, what's returned here in the left side of your heart is oxygenated blood. Okay, so from the left, you pump it out to the rest of the body. It's now deoxygenated blood. You deliver oxygen to the rest of your body. So this is the heart. Let's go back. What did I miss? I talked about the double circulation. I talked about the anatomy, the different parts. I talked about the blood flow. So one circulation goes to the lungs, and then the left side goes to the rest of the body. Now let's talk about the beating of the heart. Okay. So as you can see here in my GIF, again, there's atrial contraction followed by ventricular contraction. And how does your heart do this? This is in your reading notes. You have really good bullet points there. I've read through it. So how does the body, not body, sorry, how does the heart beat? How does the heart beat? The heartbeat, the activities when the heart beats, that's what we call a cardiac cycle. So a cardiac cycle is made of atrial contraction followed by ventricular contraction. Atrial contraction, ventricular contraction, atrial contraction, ventricular contraction. Now, children, your heart beats even before you're born. I don't know the weeks now, but your parents go to the doctor. The doctor checks the womb. They listen to heart sounds. As soon as your heart is developed, it starts to beat. The electrical activity starts already, even before you are born. So that's one of the debate about abortion. Like, can you still abort a baby? So some would say, well, the heart is beating, it's alive. Some would say, well, it's just beating, but doesn't mean it's alive. Some would say, well, the brain is already formed, therefore it's alive. Another group would say, whether it's formed or not, baby is not really using it yet, so it's not alive. Anyway, go back to my point. Your heart starts beating even before you're born. So the heartbeat is called the cardiac cycle, and it's made of two events: the atrial contraction and dilation, and the ventricular contraction and dilation. So contraction of the arteries followed by contraction of the ventricles. Miss, how does it do that? Well, children, your heart tissue is made, your heart muscles are myogenic, meaning the origin of the electricity, the electrical current comes from the heart muscle itself. Okay, so that's why your heart muscle is special. They have their own electrical conductivity, meaning electricity is free to be transmitted or distributed in the heart muscle itself. However, from your reading as well, you have a group of muscles right here in the corner of your right atrium. Those muscle cells apparently can depolarize. Depolarize means like can conduct electricity. So they can depolarize fastest. So these group of muscles there, it's not like a piece of tissue. It's like the muscle cells here, they just contract faster than the rest of the muscle cells making your heart. So these area here where your muscle cells contract the fastest, we call those groups of muscle cells the sinoatrial node. It's a sinoatrial node. Because they beat fastest than the rest of the tissue, they determine determine the heartbeat. Because they beat fastest, everybody else follows from them. So the sinoatrial node, because they beat fastest, they conduct electricity to the atrium. Please look at the branch here. Sinoatrial node spreads that electrical conductivity to the rest of the right and the left atrium. So electricity spreads in the atrium thanks to the signal from the sinoatrial node. Starts from the sinoatrial node, it spreads in the right and the left atrium to trigger atrial contraction. Okay, why does the atrium contract? Well, in response to the electrical current coming out from the sinoatrial node. So, children, atrium contracts. Now, there's a delay that electricity will be conducted to this AV node. This is not in the book, right? This is in your notebook. AV node. It's called the atrioventricular node. That's another group of specialized muscle cells that can receive the electrical impulse from the sinoatrial node. So from the SA node, the electrical impulse will reach the AV node. And the AV node children will have two branches, branch to the left, branch to the right. And the AV node is responsible to spread the electrical conductivity to the ventricles. Okay, so if you want to think of it in order, starts in the SA node, spreads to the atrium, passes to the AV node, then from the AV node spreads to the ventricles. So the atrium contracts first, and then there's a little bit of a delay. There's a delay because that's going to be passed on the AV node, and then the ventricles follow. So this SA node, children, is what you call it's also known as it's called the pacemaker. It sets the pace. It's the fastest to have electrical conductivity. Therefore, it sets the pace for the rest of the heart. SA node is your pacemaker, um, and there are cases where the body cannot contract in sync. So it has to be lumped up. Atrium, ventricle, atrium, ventricle. There could be times where there's congenital deformities in the structure of the heart. The SA node could be damaged by what, miss? I don't know, cigarette smoking, lifestyle, bacteria. So this cannot conduct electricity properly, right? So what, miss? If it cannot, then children, imagine your heart, four chambers beating on their own simultaneously whenever they want to. So that's what you call fibrillation. Ah, that's the word I was looking for earlier. I'm so old now. It's called a defibrillator. Defibrillator. That's the one that you go like, shoo. That's a defibrillator. Now, why is it called a defibrillator? Because when you have a heart attack, all of these muscle tissue, they kind of contract on their own. They're not in a rhythm now. So you can let's look at heart fibrillation. So you can see if they have videos here. So when you say fibrillation, the chambers independently contract. They don't. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. YouTube, you do this.
Your heart is made up of 4 chambers, 2 atria at the top and 2 ventricles. The pacemaker center sends out electrical signals. In a healthy heart, regular electrical signals cause your heart to pump blood in a coordinated way around your body. The electrical activity of the heart is called the heart's rhythm, and when something abnormal occurs, this is called an arrhythmia. There are many types of arrhythmia, and they have different effects on the pumping action of the heart. Most commonly, an arrhythmia can either make the pump too fast, too slow, or in an uncoordinated way, but are manageable with the support of your doctor and monitoring. The most common arrhythmia is called atrial fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation, commonly called AF or AFib, is a type of arrhythmia where random chaotic electrical signals occur in the top heart chambers, the atria. This often causes your heart to twitch rapidly and rhythm, meaning that your heart may not be able to pump blood to the rest of the body as effectively as it should. Atrial fibrillation can make you feel short of breath, lightheaded, or a feeling like your heart is racing, called palpitations. Uncoordinated and ineffective pumping of blood through the heart can mean blood starts to clot, and this can lead to a stroke if the clot travels to the brain. Atrial fibrillation is usually manageable with medications or procedures to control your heart.
Okay, that's Australian, right, Isabella? The accent. Okay, so regularly, normally, your heart beats in rhythm. Glubbed up, atrium first, ventricles next. However, in fibrillation, the example is atrial fibrillation. There's also ventricular fibrillation. That's much worse if this is not coordinated. If it goes excuse me, if it goes fibrillation, so the heart muscles are all contracting on their own, you don't have your set rhythm, that's where you need a defibrillator to reset the electrical conductivity so you can put back the rhythm of the heart. So for those people who have congenital deformities, maybe of the heart or infections of those SA node or the sinuses, they can have a pacemaker. So a pacemaker, I just want to FYI you might see, like you might know of people in the future have a pacemaker. They have the electric generator here, like it's actually under the skin right here. There, that has electricity, and this has a branch of like a wire that connects here to the right atrium. So the pacemaker is here, and then it's connected to really what's the word for it, like microscopic wires or something that's connected here to the right atrium. Now this can last, I'm guessing right now, but I know it's like 1 or 2 years, and then they go to the hospital to change the batteries or to recharge it. Yeah, my friend has this, and he told us every time he passes through the whatever in the airport, the machine, he always sets the beep, 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 the alarm. This is made of metal, so he informs the security personnel, I have a pacemaker. It might set off the alarm, but that's a pacemaker to set the pace, to help your heart beat in rhythm. Okay. Questions? All right. So I want to talk about, I think some of you got this wrong on the poster. Not wrong, but incomplete. The heart on its own, children can beat. Okay? On its own. When I say on its own, without nervous influence from the brain. Even when you remove the heart from the body, it's going to contract on its own for a while if the ions are still present there. However, okay, some of you put this in your poster. The brain can increase or decrease the heart rate. Let me clarify that. The beating of the heart is not in response to the brain. The heart can beat on its own. However, two things. Nerves from the brain and hormones can increase or decrease your heart rate. Okay? They don't make your heart beat. They just increase or decrease your heart rate. Got it? It can increase or decrease the heart rate. Okay. This is not in your notebook, but I think I saw it in your poster. Let's talk about the brain. Nervous stimulation. If your brain needs to increase your heart rate, it sends a signal through the accelerator nerve. Please write this down. Accelerator nerve. It's easy to understand. Why do they name it accelerator nerve? From the word accelerator. What does accelerate mean? You remember physics? Force equals mass times acceleration. What is acceleration? Well, it's acceleration is speed up. So the accelerator nerve speeds up the heart rate. So the accelerator nerve is connected to the right atrium as well. So it sends signal to your sinoatrial node to increase the heart rate. There's also, I think I've seen this in Juwon poster. Juwon, I remember. You have the accelerator nerve from the sympathetic nervous system, and there's the blank nerve from the parasympathetic nervous system. What is that nerve? It starts with the letter V. Or maybe you don't have it. Does anybody have that? V? Starts with a V? No? Okay. You can write this down, please. Vagus nerve. VAGUS. Accelerator nerve increases the heart rate. Vagus nerve decreases the heart rate. So those two can speed up or slow down your heartbeat. Those nerves connected to the heart. Let's look at the diagram here. Accelerate. Okay, just borrowing random pictures here. So these nerves are branches from the spinal cord that comes from the brain. So from the brain to the spinal cord to the body, to the heart in your body, it could trigger right there. Look at how they're both touching the SA node. So they can influence the SA node either to speed it up or to slow it down. Accelerator nerve, vagus nerve. I think many of you use the word sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. To simplify that, when you talk about the nervous system, which we will not learn, we talk about the nervous system, you talk about a branch of the peripheral nervous system that is responsible for automatic responses. So if it's a sympathetic response, these are your fight and flight responses. Like when you're like active and hyper and you're sweating and your heart rate beats fast, those are because of stimulation by the sympathetic nervous system. When you're relaxing though, that's because of parasympathetic nervous system. There are nerves connected to the rest of the body that relaxes the body, slows down the heart, slows down the breathing, constricts the pupils of the eye. That's what you call the parasympathetic nervous response. So this is called the flight or fight response. This is called the rest or digest response. You're relaxed, you're not relaxed. So these two branches of the nervous system are also in charge of speeding up the heart rate via the accelerator nerve or slowing down the heart rate via the vagus nerve. Clear, clear, clear. So these two, they don't make your heart beat. Clear? They only speed it up or slow it down. Okay? There are also, so number one, I said nerves from the brain. Number two, hormones. Hormones can also increase the heart rate. So we're looking at epinephrine. Maybe a new word for you. However, when I tell you epinephrine is also adrenaline, maybe that's a little bit familiar. Maybe you're familiar with the adrenaline rush. So the adrenaline, those epinephrine, children, are hormones produced by your adrenal glands. Again, in response to the sympathetic nervous system. So the glands produce epinephrine. The glands produce this adrenaline. This goes to your blood and it reaches your heart. Once the hormone reaches your heart, it makes your heart beat faster. Correct me if I'm wrong. I assume you know what adrenaline rush is. This is like suddenly you have all of those strength, your heart beats really fast. Um, in case, for example, there's a fire and you're in panic mode, there's going to be adrenaline rush that can give you extra strength to carry, I don't know, your refrigerator or your piano by yourself. Where did this superpower come from? It's actually from this hormone, epinephrine. It's supplied by your body in cases of emergency. So, in a sympathetic response, in emergency, this hormone goes into your heart, makes it beat faster. Why, miss? Why does it want to make it beat faster? So you can supply blood to your muscles. You have all of those oxygenated blood to your muscles ready to, I don't know, to help your muscles contract. So faster heart rate, more blood flowing into your organs, more blood flowing into your muscles. You have that sudden strength. We call that the adrenaline rush. And your heart just beats faster. Okay, so nerves from the brain can increase and decrease it. Hormones from your adrenal glands called epinephrine can also increase heart rate. Lastly, I have 3 minutes. Lastly, now you have to know the cardiac cycle. The cardiac cycle is the heartbeat. It's just a more fancy way to say it. Cardiac cycle, aka heartbeat. Um, Please focus here. I need you to see this GIF beside that. Let's copy. Okay. So look at the GIF while we're analyzing the graph. Let's present. Please have a look. This is the last. You look at the cardiac cycle. You're talking about, sorry, excuse me, make it a little bit smaller. Right here. And let's have a look at this. Okay, when you look at the cardiac cycle, so you're talking about contraction of the atrium and then contraction of the ventricles, low battery. Okay, all right. So as I've said earlier, atrium contracts first, followed by the ventricle. So in the cardiac cycle, when you're trying to explain a heartbeat, children, when you're explaining a heartbeat, the first few seconds of the heartbeat, the atrium is contracting and the ventricle is relaxing. Okay? Initially, the atrium contracts, while at that point, the ventricle is relaxing. And then after that few seconds, when all of the blood is pushed down into ventricles, then obviously the atrium will relax. While the atrium is relaxing, the ventricles will start contracting. Okay? After the ventricle contracts, both of the ventricle and the atrium relaxes. And then another heartbeat. So to simplify, atrium contracts, ventricle contracts, both of them relax. Again, atrium contracts, ventricle contracts, both of them relax. So that's a cardiac cycle. Now I will want you to read this thoroughly in your book. So it's explaining more about what's happening to the valve and also the pressure in the artery. Let me just add the pressure of the artery. So atrium contracts, the artery is resting, so it's diastolic pressure. And then you have ventricles contracting, therefore blood flows out of your arteries. In the arteries, you have systolic pressure. And then both of them relax, therefore arteries also relax. Repeat, atrium contracts, artery is diastolic blood pressure. Ventricle contracts, therefore systolic pressure in the arteries. Then both the atrium and the ventricle relax, diastolic again in your arteries. So the cardiac cycle, children, is the atrium contracting and then the ventricle contracting and then both atrium and ventricles relax. It repeats over and over again. Heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat. Lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. Yeah. There's plenty of information. I recorded my lecture. You can feel free to watch it. I'll post it on Classroom. I'm also going to post the link from my YouTube channel. It's also summarized into 15 15-minute videos. Are there any questions before we go and enjoy our lunch? Enjoy your heart. I hope you learned something about your heart. And your homework is, what did I put there? I'll post the Kerbudo later, 6.2, just a review. And then you read and make notes for 6.3. Okay, so we have already finished 2 body systems, digestive system and the cardiovascular system. Goodbye. Stay if you have questions. Thank you for listening. I'll stop recording now. Bye. Eat your lunch.
Bye, Miss. Thank you.
Miss.
Bye, miss. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Miss, I have a question for the Holly Jolly delivery. You said the crinkles come in like a box and there's like a bunch inside the box. Do you know how many are inside the box, Miss?
Wait, sorry. There's a lot. There's actually a lot. So I'll just approximate. Probably 25 pieces.
Oh. Oh wow.
A lot. Because it's like small, but it's really good. It's really good. Just put 30. It's a lot. And then we'll just wrap ribbon maybe. Just to make it presentable.
And how much is the price for that?
No, price is 40 pesos. So we can sell it for 100. We can profit 60.
Got it, Miss. Thank you.
Okay. See ya. That's it?
Yes, Miss.
All right. Bye.